Real quick, this is our 5th year down to Paraguay, and I say it every year, and I can almost say it with utter confidence that this is the best year ever. Thank you for your prayers. You sent down a great team, and they did very well. And so we're going to go through, and you're going to get a picture. There's 13 of us that you're going to hear from and get a picture of all the things that went on. Casey's going to start with.
Hi, everyone. My name is Casey Dillon, and I am a registered nurse, and I went down with the team this year for the fourth year. And I just want to share a little bit with you guys about the relationships that we've been building there. Every year our team returns to Paraguay. It's unique. But really what remains the same is that God continues to foster these relationships we've had with those we've shared the gospel with. For instance, Victoria has maintained a relationship with a woman she led to Christ 5 years ago. Her name is Miriam, and Victoria has made consistent effort every year to meet with her, and throughout the year she continues to be in touch with her on Facebook and just fosters that relationship every single year. And 3 summers ago, I shared with you guys about a man named Theophilo. It all started because I was in desperate need for a restroom, and he was gracious enough to let me use the one that was in his store. And God used that situation to open up the doors for a 3-day discipleship. Last summer, he and his family, as a result of that, graciously opened their home to a medical clinic, to have it in their home that was open for the entire community. I then got to know his wife, his 2 daughters, Karina and Sandra, more in depth, and I met Karina's boyfriend. This year, I was curious to see what God would do, considering there really was no way I could visit them in my time there with everything that we had to do. So one day, I was in San Lorenzo, which is the main city that is very close to where we work. I was picking up a medication for a boy with a seizure disorder, and I heard my name being called behind me. And I was thinking, oh my goodness, who in the middle of Paraguay would know me, would know my name to call me out? And so I turned around, and who was there but Karina's boyfriend? And I started talking with him and catching up with him, and he was just so excited to have seen me on the streets of Paraguay. I was dumbstruck because it was God's perfect timing. We caught up, and I invited him to the clinic that we were doing the next day. And then God continued to work out his perfect plan for us as we attended the weekend camp with all the children. And so the teen group Juntos came up on Saturday night. And again, I was floored because lo and behold, Theophilo's other daughter was at the camp. And so I was just so excited. I grabbed a translator just to catch up and see where she was. And apparently she had been attending Juntos for a while now, which is just so awesome. I was excited because I was seeing God working in this family and being able to see the fruits of 3 summers worth of ministry. To top it all off, I happened to be sharing my testimony that night, and I was able to share with her all that God had done in my life and continue to reinforce the gospel message. I was so grateful to God for this opportunity to build such strong relationships for him and to be the feet that actually spread the good news of our gracious Lord.
Hello, I'm Dr. Andrew Juren. I've been attending here since about 2012. I think I've met a lot of you, but not everyone. My wife and daughter are also members here. I'm a resident at St. John Hospital. This was my first mission trip. It's the first time I've ever been on a mission trip, south of the equator, to Paraguay. And it was an amazing experience. I'm going to talk about our mission, or about our clinics. We did 4 clinics on 4 different days. We also did some door-to-door that I'll talk about. In terms of the clinics, we saw about 1,000 people. No one's 100% sure, but I would say the absolute minimum, pretty conservative person, I'd say at least 800 people we saw, and that's an incredible number of people. A lot of children, a lot of women, a lot of men as well, and they came primarily because it was a free clinic with U.S. doctors, but that's not all that they got. They got to meet somebody right when they first came in, got a number registered. They talked with the triage people, did an excellent job figuring out what's going on, taking their blood pressures, talked to them about spiritual needs. They saw one of the doctors. We had some help from the church there, some medical students and doctors there that helped us out. And then They went to the pharmacy, got the medications they needed for free, ministering there, and then finally talked with somebody one-on-one to really talk about Christ and the story. And some of the other people talk about all the various things they did with the kids while they were waiting to go through this whole process. But I have to say that the clinics, we did some in poor communities, and we did others in very poor communities. So there was certainly an enormous need there. After the first day in Reducto, we came back and did some door-to-door as well. That was my first time doing real, one-on-one ministry. As a physician, certainly there were health needs as well. So talked with these two ladies, talked about the gospel with them, figured out which medications they needed. Went back, got the medications, came back, and they said, you know what, our son is really interested. Can you tell him the gospel message as well? So I talked with him. His name was Antonio, and he is mute. He doesn't, unable to speak, but he's able to understand. And so I shared the gospel with him one-on-one, and he was just overjoyed with it. And he said, you know what, come with me. And he motioned. He took us through his backyard, through another neighbor's yard, across a lane, and talked to his friend, Gustavo, who had a motorcycle accident 2 years ago. And he was just lying in bed, depressed. We talked with him, shared the gospel with him, shared the gospel with his mother, made sure he was on good medications. And they were both, we spent another hour with them, and they were both really uplifted by that experience and said, you know what, come with me. I've got another neighbor you need to see. So it took us across the lane again, saw another a woman there with her daughter who has cerebral atrophy, and she had pneumonia. We made sure she was doing well, prayed with them as well, shared the gospel, and it was just an incredible experience. So I'd like to thank you for those of you who supported us both financially and in prayers and the many other ways that you do that. This was an incredible opportunity for me, for the team, and also the group there. We didn't just come in and leave. Each of these communities has a Bible study or a church there that's going to continue the ministry and continue harvesting this, or I should say, growing this church locally. And we were just that one big campaign and an incredible tool for that church to use us. So I'd like to thank you for that opportunity.
I'd like to thank the ladies of the church, Los Hermanos de Crosspoint, for the beautiful blankets you made for women in Paraguay. And at first when I heard that these blankets had been made, I kept thinking, how in the world are we going to have room to take these blankets? But one of the ladies after another called and said, we've really prayed about this and we really have a heart and we think God will use these. So we managed to get them into a bag and we distributed them throughout our luggage. And then when we got here, we prayed that God would give us an opportunity to honor those prayers. And so I would like you to know that there are women in Paraguay today who have one of these. And there are little notes that we gave them in the pockets, written by the women in our church, because we are one body of Christ, sisters writing to sisters. And the notes in the little pockets of the poncho said, we want you to know when you put this poncho on that God has his arms around you. And so one of the blankets we gave away was to a little girl with cerebral atrophy. We gave one to her family. And then we gave 2 more to 2 women when we were walking door to door one day. And then there was a little bitty lady who came into the clinic, and she looked like she was 96 years old. And when we wrapped this blanket around her on a very cold day at the clinic after seeing probably 300 people, she started smiling. She was all shrunken, and they asked her how old she was. And we thought she would probably say 90, 95, 96. And she said, my age is 74. And I just thought, that's how old my mother is. She's 74. And she's still young and beautiful and strong and has everything she needs. But I could see what the years had done to this woman who probably didn't have sufficient medical care or heat in her house or enough food on her table. So I'd like to thank you, the ladies of Cross Point, who made these ponchos for us to bring down here. And I want you to know, as we wrap them around people, we told them that we were the hands of Christ coming to give them a hug from God. Thank you very much, ladies from Cross Point.
Good morning. I'm Saravolatz. I was the other physician who accompanied the team. It was my second trip to Paraguay. I was grateful on this trip having all the team members, especially to have my daughter Stephanie serving along with me, and especially to have Andrew to come and share the load of seeing all the patients that we saw. We did three things while we were there. One was we provided health care in the form of the clinics that Andrew referred to. We saw at least twice as many patients as we saw last year, and we were busy, but we were able to get through the course of the day. We also provide medical education and other forms of education, business education that Jim Reimer and Pastor Swiatek had attended to. And finally, we shared, most importantly, the gospel with the people. As part of the clinics, as Andrew mentioned, we had an opportunity to go door to door, and that really is the fun part of what we're going to be able to do, because we get to see where the people live. And where the people live is very, very poor, with just dirt on the floor, with little means in terms of resources available to them. We visited, Jim Reimer and I had visited Felix Thomas, a 75-year-old man who was bedridden because he couldn't have hip surgery, and we attended as best as we could to his medical needs and shared the gospel. And then his wife said, come next door to see Sofia Gonzalez, which we visited. And Sofia was an 82-year-old woman who was an amputee with diabetes, who's bedridden, who had bad arthritis, and we ministered to her in terms of trying to provide health care needs, as well as Jim Reimer sharing the gospel. We also visited a woman, and her sister came up to us, and her sister said, you know, she said, last year after you came to the clinics, I became a Christian. And if that was the only reason why we went last year, for that one person to become, I think it was a worthwhile investment for us to be down there. We returned back to the clinics, and a woman came up to Jim Reimer. She had tears going down her cheek, and she said, you know, I can't believe that people from North America cared enough to come down and help us. And that's why we were there. We were there because we cared for people, and they knew that we cared for them. I had the opportunity to speak 6 times, 5 hospitals, and the Paraguay Infectious Disease Society. And at each lecture that I gave, I closed with sharing the gospel message to the people. And I was thrilled at the AIDS hospital where I spoke at, where at the end of that, the chief nursing officer came up to Pastor Gonzalez, who's Pastor Alcides Gonzalez, who's the pastor of the Paraguayan church that we partner with. And she said to him, she said, what the last part of the message was that he shared, the last part of his lecture was the most important thing we need to hear. Our staff need to hear this. Our patients need to hear this. And won't you come back and share that message with our staff again? And so on September 25th, Pastor Alcides is going back to the hospital to meet with the nursing staff to share the gospel message and to try and address the spiritual needs of the patients. So please pray for him, because that's part of what we do. We lay the seed, we spread the seed, and the people from Paraguay are down there trying to nurture that seed in terms of the sharing of the gospel, and we have doors open to us that we would have never expected before. I'm grateful to all of you for your prayers, because they clearly opened doors for us that I didn't expect, the people in Paraguay didn't expect, but it clearly was God working through us at this field. So thank you for your financial support, and especially thank you for your prayerful support for our trip, and that the work that we are doing will just continue to grow in the community of Paraguay.
My name is Alicia, and being involved in the youth ministry here at Cross Point, this was not the first mission trip that I got to go on this summer, but this trip to Paraguay was definitely one of the highlights, and it was very different from the other trips that I've been on. So one area that it was very different was we weren't able to just attend to them spiritually, but we were able to give them the physical help that they needed. And that was really neat, and I got to especially work with the children's ministry. The people would come to the clinics, and they would be there all day. Sometimes there were, sometimes 200-300 people there all waiting to see the doctor at one time. So the kids would come in masses, and they would just be around the tables and just looking at you like, what are you going to get me to do? And so we were able to give them wordless book bracelets with the wordless book colors on it and explain the gospel that way. Also through fingernail polish and face painting, we were able to share the gospel through the cube and through different Bible stories. You can see here, I was working with the translator, Carolina, and she was the same age as many of the children that were coming in, but she was so passionate about sharing the gospel and being right there alongside of us, so that was really neat to see the church in Paraguay coming right alongside of us. And another thing was we just got to hang out with the kids sometimes all day, and like I said, the people would come and they'd have to wait a long time to see the doctor, and so they would just be there, and we would have so many opportunities to share the gospel and just interact with them. These two girls that are in this picture, Nicole and Monica, and it was a very unique thing because they didn't speak much English. They were eager to learn English, and so I was able to teach them a few words in English, and it was just so neat to hear them say, Nicole, she said to me in her broken English, she said, "I admire you." And it took me back because I had hardly spent much time with her, but I had, there were so many kids to give attention to, but I had, given her the gospel and tried to teach her a little bit of English, and it really impacted me how much of an impact I was having on them. It wasn't just about keeping them busy and out of mischief, but it was just showing love to them. And so I just want to thank you all for your prayers and your support that were enabling us to give mental and physical strength, as well as just to share the gospel over and over. So thank you.
Hi, Crosspoint. Hayley here. This is the beautiful lake and Campamento behind me here. This is where we've been staying with the kids and having a great time. But I just wanted to tell you a memory that I had yesterday. I was playing with the kids, and we just felt like we didn't have a purpose here as a team. All the teens were running with the kids and running all the games, and we kind of felt like, what's our purpose? Why are we here? So I just kind of felt spontaneous yesterday and took some kids over to the field. There's a big giant soccer field back there, and we played 500 with the Frisbee. I love Frisbee. So I got the kids together and said, okay, this is what we're going to do. Each catch, you get 1 point, you get 5 points, you get to throw the Frisbee. And so they all participated, and every time they caught the ball, they went, oh, I got another point. And then we were playing around, and one of the boys came up and tickled me, and they were so cute. And then later we were playing with flowers. We collected 38 different types of flowers in a mile radius. Oh my gosh. So we were taking the little flowers, he loves me not, in Spanish, of course. And he ended with, this little boy ended with, I love you. And then he came over and gave Stephanie and I a giant hug, and it was so adorable. We're here to share God's love with people, and even simple things like playing with kids and encouraging them and showing God's love to them is so powerful. And I could just see that their faces were so lit up and excited to just play. So yeah, that's one memory from the trip. There are so many more. I'll share more with you guys, but only time for one. So.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Saravolatz, and this was my first time down in Paraguay. And as my first time, I was extremely nervous, and I did not know what to expect, but we jumped right into things. As soon as we arrived at the airport down there, we went straight to the church, and we started meeting all the people that we would be working alongside with all week, and they started to get ready for Juntos, which is their youth group down there. And we all started taking our seats, and I was just nervous, like who was even going to sit next to me. And God just placed these two 13-year-old girls next to me named Eliana and Marion. And they were the sweetest people that he could have put by me to make me feel so comfortable. And we just talked about what they liked and their hobbies, their family, what books they read, and just normal stuff that you would talk to any 13-year-old in the entire world with. And they helped translate a lot of what they were talking about at Juntos to me. They would whisper little things in my ear in English so that I could have some sort of ideas to what was happening. And as the week went on, we did medical clinics for almost every day the rest of the week. And then on the Friday, we went to the youth camp, and just 2 buses full of all these kids so excited to be there. Were just like screaming, just arrived at the camp, and they got off the bus and they just started running around like it was chaos. And I turned around and I just felt Eliana and Marion hug me from behind, and they were just so excited because we didn't know that each other would be at the camp, and they were just so happy to see me. And I really got to build a strong relationship with these 2 girls over that weekend. And I knew going down to Paraguay that God would be able to use me in ways that he doesn't hear necessarily, like at medical clinics and going door to door, outreaching the community every single day. But it was the way he used me just to show his love to these kids who might not see that love at home or in other areas of that in their life. That was just so amazing and left me in awe. And whether it was just throwing frisbees with them or playing hopscotch or braiding their hair and just talking to them really and getting to know them, it was an incredible experience. And the next day after the camp, the Monday, we went to the school where they attended and Nate spoke, and I got to see them again, and they introduced me to their friends, and we said our final goodbyes. And as I was leaving to get on the bus to go for the last time, Eliana ran to me across the street yelling my name, and she handed me this letter that she wrote, and she said she wrote it during school, and it was in perfect English, and it was just the sweetest letter, and she wanted to thank me for just even coming down there and spending my time with them, with her, and she just thought it was so special. And I've been blessed enough to be able to keep in touch with her still, like in America, through social media and other sorts, and I'm just so thankful that God gave me this experience to share his love with others.
Hello, my name is Nate King, and I am the Student Ministries Director here at Crosspoint. This was my first opportunity to go to Paraguay, and it was a true privilege and learning experience. One of the most significant ministry opportunities I was involved in was youth ministry. Ironic, I know. There were 2 specific forms of youth ministry I was involved in. The first was sharing the gospel through storytelling during a few of the medical clinics. Although the majority of my time was spent in triage, I was able to take a few breaks and talk to some of the middle and high school students waiting to be treated. The second opportunity was to preach twice, once in chapel at Heaven's Kingdom Christian School, and the other time in a night service on Saturday at the camp. Speaking to teenagers was great, but frankly, it wasn't the most impactful experience of the trip. Rather, caring for the physical needs of people was greatly influential, as it is not a normal task for me to be involved in. In triage, I was coughed on, sneezed on, and touched by people who looked like they did not have the resources to bathe properly. I had to physically touch people to take their pulse, temperature, blood pressure, and more. I saw people with worms, sores, blindness, lameness, those who had high fevers, crying babies, and an elderly woman who was quite literally skin and bones. But through all of that, I didn't really mind, and quite frankly, I loved it. I was forced to notice, care, and ask questions to myself about the physical needs of people around me, at home. My neighbor's husband drives a truck and is gone for most of the year. She is middle-aged and has a 4-year-old daughter. I can care for her with kindness, with caring for her physical needs, such as giving her something to make a meal. Or I can offer to watch her child for a night. There are homeless people less than a mile from my house in every direction. How can I share the gospel with them in a verbal and physical way? As a youth worker, I am called to care for the spiritual needs of students, but as a child of God, I am commanded to care for those in need. There is no excuse for being complacent in this area, and working in Paraguay was a clear teaching of this. I look forward to helping in Paraguay in the future and hope to be a positive influence both physically and spiritually as well.
Good morning. My name is Andrew Leong. For those of you who don't know me, I serve with the student ministry here at Crosspoint. With Nate on Sunday mornings, I teach Sunday school to the kids. During the rest of the week, I'm an accountant, and so down in Paraguay, I didn't have much of an impact in terms of the medical service, so I worked more so in the evangelistic side. And so I wanted to tell you just one of the many stories that we have about something that really impacted me. During the last clinic in a neighborhood called San Ramon, at the very end of the day, a woman came into the room where we were doing evangelism. Her name was, I believe it was Carmen, and she sat down, and I could tell she didn't really want to be there, and I know it was getting late for me. Everybody wanted to go home. The clinic was wrapping up. People were packing things up, so I figured, well, let's sow the seed and get the gospel out and let her know what God wants her to know. And so I started sharing the gospel with her. I went through the same thing, the exact same presentation that I'd given everybody else that day. But right near the end, she started to cry, and I was really confused. She wasn't saying anything. I was just explaining things to her, and she just started weeping. And I asked her, I said, "What's wrong?" And she said, "Well, I've been to church my entire life, and I always hear about sin and how I'm a sinner and how my kids are sinners and how we deserve hell. And I've never heard of how I can fix that. I always thought I had to be a good person, but now you're telling me that Jesus did it for me, and it's because of his grace that I can be saved, and that's just so overwhelming." And so for me, that was hugely impactful to see the physical reaction to a spiritual reality in this woman's life, seeing the gospel affecting her and hearing this 35-year-old woman going to church her entire life, hearing the gospel for the first time, made a huge difference. And so all of us have very similar stories. All of us have had similar experiences sharing the gospel with people and watching God work right in front of their eyes. And so I want to say a big thank you to everybody who gave and to everybody who prayed. I want to thank you for supporting this church and supporting our efforts down in Paraguay. And I want to thank the Lord for using us, using the church in Crosspoint and the church at Florida in San Lorenzo to help the people of Paraguay and to bring people to his kingdom and to a knowledge of him. So thank you very much.
Good morning. My name is Victoria, for those of you who I may not have met. This has been my 5th year in Paraguay now, and it's been a true blessing and an incredible experience to see the team as well as the mission grow over the past 5 years. I want to piggyback off a little bit of what Andrew's saying and just talk about the effect of the gospel in general in the country of Paraguay. My role this year, as every year, is sharing the gospel, is to be evangelizing, because I'm not a doctor, I'm not a nurse, so my place is either helping with the kids, as you can see up there, drawing, painting nails, painting faces, but mostly in the room that we call the evangelizing room. This year I would say the absolute minimum amount of people that we were able to talk to was 1,200, give or take. But we know that through the clinics, through the kids camp that we're at, through the different children's presentations, Lou's talks in hospitals, and Jim and Pastor Matt presenting to all the businessmen, we know that minimum number it probably far exceeded 1,200. So it was an incredible amount of people that we were able to reach this year. I'm a little bit sick, my voice is a little bit gone, and I really do say part of that is because I talked so much while we were down there. I have never shared the gospel so much as I did this year. My translator and I had to take short breaks all the time because of the frequency of talking to all the people that we did. It was one family after another after another. Every year it does get better, and God opens up more and more doors each year. As you can see, this is just some of the pictures of the groups, people sharing the gospel with people. The most exciting and impacting thing about this experience is that people want the gospel. I've never met anyone in Paraguay in 5 years that does not believe in God, heaven, and hell. Where they go wrong is that they believe that their actions, their good works, or their religion is going to save them and get them to heaven one day. I know that everyone who has gone to this church for a while knows the bridge illustration that Pastor Matt always talks about. I used that an incredible amount in Spanish this year to show people how we are separated from God, and it's our sin, and what we deserve is hell. People have not heard that before. I always tell them the story gets worse. We can't do anything about it. And it's an incredible experience to be able to go from that and then share with them the good news of Jesus and how he came to this earth. He lived a perfect life, and he took the punishment that we deserve on his shoulders for us. It's an incredible thing, as Andrew said, to see a physical reaction to a spiritual reality. It's almost as if people are relieved and excited, and the sadness in their eyes goes away because they know that they can be saved now, because they, for the first time, heard that they cannot save themselves. Many people who I talked to this year had literally never heard that before, even though they have Bibles, they go to church. And seeing people get the gospel for the first time is, and to really understand it, is an incredible joy to witness. And many people, they don't accept Christ right then and there, but at least for the first time, they know the truth and they can be saved. Because really, how can they believe in someone who they have not heard about? The people in Paraguay are so ready to hear and accept the truth of Jesus. It's an incredible thing for our church to be a part of this ministry and helping and partnering with the church down there as they continue to disciple the people who we talk to. And it really is amazing to see God literally change people's lives in front of our eyes. So in closing, I just want to share a passage with you that was really on my heart the whole time we were down there this year, and it's Luke 10:2. And Jesus said to them, "The harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Therefore pray earnestly to the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers into his harvest."
Okay, so I just want to give everyone an update on the vehicle that we helped purchase for Maximo Toledo, Pastor Maximo Toledo last year. He's the pastor that is working with indigenous pastors in the northern parts of Paraguay. And through the generous contributions of the church, we were able to help him purchase a 2004 SUV four-wheel drive, and he's been using that actively for pastor training and outreach programs in what they call the Chaco in northern Paraguay. It's running great, and we have a few photos and clips that we want to show you to demonstrate how our generosity provided by the Lord has blessed him and his ministry. A second thing I wanted to mention is just the realities of doing pastoral training in the north that Pastor Maximo Toledo is working on. He told me a story that I wanted to pass along. He was giving a pastor training up in the northern part of the country and using the idea of saying that we need to read our Bible daily, take in our daily spiritual bread, as it were, just as we eat early. And he was stopped by one of the participants and said, "Well, that doesn't make sense to us because we don't eat every day. In fact, we only have food every so often." And during the 3-day training program he was there, none of them had breakfast, lunch, or dinner for 3 days. So the reality that he's dealing with is a little different than it would be in the rest of Paraguay. And it demonstrates how much a little gift can make a big difference. So one of the things we'll be doing is helping them provide food for their pastor training programs in the upcoming year.
I'm Marc Rance. The last day that we were in Paraguay, we had a meeting with the leadership of the church down in Paraguay. And we had 4 big takeaways from this meeting. The first one was that the clinics that we're doing, they're working. They're very effective. They're a good way to show God's love and then later share God's love, because we provide them with free medical care and we love on them while they're waiting, and then later we can preach the gospel. And so they have a plan, and Lord willing, we'll be doing 4 more clinics next year, and they're already working on getting those scheduled. The second thing is the last neighborhood we worked in, called San Ramon. Very, very poor neighborhood. You can see it up on the screen. It's a squatter village. There's no school. There's no church, and it's very poor. We did a clinic in this neighborhood and helped hundreds of people, and hundreds of people heard the gospel. So that was to lay the groundwork for a bigger campaign that we'll do hopefully next year. The third thing was that Jim and Pastor Matt got to go talk to the business people. And these were government people. These were people from the agricultural sort of businesses in Paraguay. And they were able to preach integrity, and they were able to preach the gospel. And they were well received. It's been said that there is a lot of corruption in the business and the government in Paraguay, and only the gospel can fix that. And so the ball is rolling, and hopefully there will be more meetings next year. And the fourth thing was that Dr. Saravolatz has a very, very impressive professional resume, unlike anything they've seen in Paraguay before. And so the idea is next year, just like he was able to get in and do these talks at the hospitals, next year they hope to set up a meeting with the Minister of Health for the entire country in order to get medical care into the poor neighborhoods and also the gospel into the poor neighborhoods. And the last big thing is that Pastor Alcides, the pastor of the church in Paraguay that we work with, has been invited to the NAB Triennial to talk about our church's partnership with them, as well as the future of missions in South America. So we thank you a ton for your support and a ton for your prayers, and just keep that up.
Well, the team did an absolutely quick and outstanding job. But we're sitting there thinking, how can 13 people try to communicate all this stuff that we have? We have hours and hours of stories and how God worked, and you guys did a great job. Hopefully you got a little picture of what has gone on and what is going on down there. Here's the absolute amazing thing about going down to Paraguay is people there are open. They're open to the gospel, unlike anything that I've observed. And I'm trying to talk about Jesus all the time. We got back into the States, and I went somewhere, and I was starting to try to have a conversation with somebody, and they just shut me right down. And I just laughed. I said, wow. I said, I spent 2 weeks down in Paraguay. Nobody shut me down. They wanted to talk, and yet you come back here, and people are cold here. It's interesting. Time magazine had an article of the happiest people in the world, and they are down in Paraguay. Interesting. They don't have much. It's not connected with their money. Many of them have never heard the gospel. They just have never heard a clear explanation of what Jesus has done for them. They have heard religion. They have heard about heaven. They have many times heard about hell. Most of the people, when you ask them, they say, I'm not going to heaven. Or if I'm going, it is by good works. And so you're able to share the good news of Jesus with them. And so pray about next year, maybe you being part of the trip. We always try to take half the team are people that have been down before, and half the team are brand new people because they go down there and you learn how to share your faith in a way that the best I can bring an analogy, it's kind of like when I did some martial arts training, it's kind of like you learn to practice and you hold your punches. You're not hitting the person, but you learn how to spar. You go down there and they want to talk to you. They are hungry. They're a nice people. They like Americans. It's a good place to go and a good place to learn how to share your faith. When we had that meeting, one of the takeaways is they said, well, what does this partnership that we have with that church, what does it benefit us? We get to take people like Andrew and Stephanie and others who have never been down there, never been out of the country, and go to a friendly environment and share Jesus. I had one of my funnest stories is I ran into Mr. Paraguay, who was there from 1972 to 76. He let me work out at his gym. He put me through this tremendous workout. Go to the next thing. This guy, who was Mr. Paraguay, is 76 years old, and he's in great shape. But I sat down with he and his wife. His wife has some medical needs. Dr. Lou came in, and Andrew, and we brought back some medicines, and were able to share the gospel. And they looked up, and they said, I've never heard that before. I've never heard it explained that way before. And so we were able to share the gospel, and he was asking great questions. He's like, well, what about our works? Because he's a good man. He owns this gym. He works, and it's an old school. what you had in your basement in 1970 is what they have down there in the gym. I mean, it is amazing. And he has 150 people at this gym every day, and he trains them. And so it's just a great opportunity. He responded well to the gospel. He said, can you bring me a Bible? I brought him a Bible with it highlighted where to read. And so I would just say, pray for the people down there. Continue to pray. Here's what we know. You sow the gospel, and some of the seed falls on thorny ground and rocky ground, and some is on the path, but some will fall on good soil, and it will bear fruit. People will say, how many people came to know Jesus? And I just say, you know what? I have no idea. We're going to find out when we get to heaven. We won no one to Jesus, but the Lord is and will work in people's hearts. And so continue to pray for them, and to pray maybe next year you will be on that trip. If you're a doctor, if you got some medical stuff that you can help with us, that's a great thing because these medical missions are working. We do want to say thank you. This was a great team. You guys were fun to work with. I got 1 minute. We were Dr. Juren, Dr. Lou, and myself were like the three stooges in one room. And the beds were lined up like that. It was just a great time. So not only did we have fun down there, but God used us. These folks that you have here preached the gospel very clearly. We did not jam it down anybody's throat. We gave them the good news, and we know God did work, he will work, and to God be the glory. So thank you from the bottom of our heart, and just continue to pray for the people down there. Let's stand, and we'll be dismissed in a word of prayer. Lord, we do thank you. We thank you for travel mercy, safety, good health, but most of all, we thank you that we were able to share your love with the people that are hungry for you. And Lord, we just commit those people into your hands. There are issues down there. Men need to learn how to treat ladies better. And so we pray for the young men there that know you, that they would be good witnesses and good examples, and husbands would love their wives like Christ loved the church. There's many physical needs there with health. And I just pray that you would help those people. Lord, there's government issues. They need your help. But, Lord, I pray most of all that your gospel would do your work in their lives. So thank you for your work. Thank you for this team. Thank you for those that sent us down and that did pray. We know that there will be brothers and sisters in heaven from Paraguay, and we will spend eternity with them, Lord, because you have saved wretches like us, not only here, but down there. And we say, to God be the glory. Give us, as we are here, a passion for people. Even though it's harder here, give us a passion for people, because there's still hurting people here. There's still people that need to be loved. They need to hear about Jesus. So we just, again, give you this day and thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.